Yo, SMS number 1, Sunday morning. Bit bored, hurt my leg at hockey, hurt the other leg at hockey yesterday. So what happens if you limp with both legs? I think you fall over, don't you? I've never done anything with regards to the making music side of things that I do, and I often say that I've made a track. And I don't know if any of you not really know what I mean by making a track, so I thought I'd have a quick run through with something that I've made quite recently. I'm really pleased with it. The mix down still needs a bit of playing around with, but it's okay, it's alright. So first thing I did is, with any track, is you make a bass line. Okay, and it's a broken bass line for the first couple of loops. If I close in, you can see that those first 4 boxes are just the introduction. So there's an awful lot. So you've got less going on in there, look. So each of these dots is a sound. So you got your clap, offbeat hat. I'm not doing anything. That's your closed hat on top of your kick drum, and then your kick drum itself. And then if you go into the main section of the bass, you've got an awful lot more going on. Now that's a bit more formulaic, it's not very interesting, and I'll show you some other stuff about that in a second. But basically, you start out with your kick drum arrangement that's going to do this. Okay? And then, as with anything else, we'll take that off and we'll do a bass line. And this some people use VSTs, some people use samples. I don't like samples. It's not that I don't like them, I just don't understand them well enough to really understand how to make them go, and you can't add LFO, and you can't really affect the transients on an imported sound. You have to take the imported sound and trust the top and bottom of it, and you can't roll off the top end of the bass to give it a bit more sub or... Anyway, that's the program that I made it with, and bass line sounds like that. Okay, but that's quite bottom endy, so on top of that, but in an octave higher, I made this. Which doesn't sound a lot different, but it's a lot wider. It gives the bass line a bit more width. You won't pick that up on the camera. And then over the top of that, I did this bad boy. Take these two off, that's not that big and powerful, is it? But if you add these two back on, it gives a much bigger dimension. Now, let's take those off, put the drums back on. Now this is boring. Dolesville, okay? Add that. Add them. And that's got quite a nice flow to it. Okay? So man cannot live on bass alone. Okay? So what else have we put in? So over the top of... Let's play that. Let's play it quietly. So we got that arrangement over the top with the drums and the percussion. Dull as dishwater. So at the top here, if I bring this down, I've got a percussion loop. Okay, so if you add the percussion loop that I'm playing, so it sounds like that, which sounds a bit cheesy, and that percussion loop is chopped. It's got what is known as the Darren Styles chopper effect over the top. So if I bring up the automation for it, you can see, let me close in on that a little, that the raised section there is playing and the dip section isn't. So it's playing the first half of every requested section, but I've told it that it's going to split it up twice, split it up into 4 sections. So that front bit is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's playing the kick, the first bit, and the first half of the offbeat. So you're only catching that snappy little transient that goes on in there. And that's your chopper, okay? So if we then add that to... Close that down so I can see what I'm working on. And then add the drums. Which gives it a shuffle, doesn't it? and then you add everything in. Okay, so that's more or less what I do. Now, as I said, man cannot live on beats alone. We made a track, okay, and the track was called Seventh Power. We made it absolutely ages ago, and it more or less had a piano. Oh, shut up. More or less had a piano that sounded like this. And I actually wrote this. This is all... well, I didn't write it. This is a remix of a track that we had already made a while ago. But I had to completely redo all the notes. But it sounds like this. But I thought that sounded a bit dull. So I've got underneath it a separate little old school sounding piano. And then if you play them both together, I'm not quite happy with that. I don't think there's enough up, so I think I'm actually going to take the original piano line and put another one in an octave higher, but just turn all the notes down, which I think it will make it catch the beginning of the note, so it will cut through the mix a bit better. It's all technical terms here, but it's okay. So that's what I did with the piano, and then over the piano obviously everybody needs a riff, so I actually took what is essentially the riff for the track and put it in a different sound. Alright, let me just single it, there we go. So it sounds like this. But as with anything, I've layered it. So I added a second layer on the top of it. Sounds like this. I used that because it's got snappy on the beginning, but it doesn't have much tail on it. And then there's another one that sounds like... Now that's filtered off the front, so it doesn't have the beginning of every note, but the second half, the latter part of every note, is thicker and a bit wider. And each one of these isn't sitting in the same place dynamically. Some is in the middle, some's off to the left and some's off to the right, to give you a nice wide span on the sound. But then if you layer these up, so listen to this. So that's one, and that's two, and that's three. Which that sounds quite nice to my ears. I like that, and all of this is stuff that I've, sounds that I've made. It might be a bank that I've had in there that I quite liked, but I had to flibbity-gibbet with, but none of it's dirty Nexus, and I've tried to avoid the presets and the plugins as much as I can, and use sounds that I've made in the past and just tinker with them. And then over the top of that, I needed to do something which had a bit more life to it, a bit more substance. So I've made triplets. So it literally just counts 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it does that in 2 bars at a go. So that's 8 beats. Okay, no, 1 bar at a time. Sorry. So this sounds just like this. There's no bottom end on that. The frequency rise, that's right up high. There's nothing under sort of 1000 hertz. That's quite scratchy and horrible. But if I put that back here and we just play all of the lead and I put it in the middle, you can hear that one lead's a bit boring and the other one fills it up. You can hear the scratchy lead coming in, the pink one. That scratchy lead's coming at the top now. So that's more or less it. There's nothing too exciting, but then when you put all the parts together, and this is like 10 minutes of me explaining really badly, but when you whack all this together, it sounds pretty much like this. That's my computer not being good enough. that's it. I spend good 6 hours a week just plinking around doing this, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but when it works it's A-okay.